I'm Lauren Mayk. Welcome to Battleground Politics. The federal government finally reopened this past week after a shutdown that lasted 43 days. The U.S. House of Representatives passed the bill just before 8:30 Wednesday evening. President Trump signed it into law 2 hours later. Now, to avoid another shutdown, lawmakers will have to make decisions about federal funding again in January. And health care is still a sticking point for Democrats. Joining us now to discuss the end of the government shutdown is Pennsylvania Congressman Brendan Boyle. He's a Democrat representing parts of Philadelphia, and he is the ranking member of the House Budget Committee. Welcome, Congressman. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, great to be back with you.
Well, let's talk about your vote in this. Why did you vote no on this?
Well, look, I never wanted the government shutdown to begin with. My position was similar to almost all of my House Democratic colleagues and most of my Senate Democratic colleagues. And that is we can walk and chew gum at the same time, that we can keep the government funded and open and operating. But at the same time, we need to, at the very least, delay the Republican imposed health care cuts that are scheduled to take effect October 1st, and in fact now have taken effect, those cuts to Obamacare. Those are the first of several health care cuts that will be taking place over the course of the next year. Cuts to Medicare that take effect on January 1, and then finally cuts to Medicaid that will take effect approximately 1 year from now. So the health care crisis is serious. It's real. People on the exchanges in Pennsylvania are looking at an average increase of 102% in their premiums. I don't think anyone in Pennsylvania, whether Democrat or Republican, voted for this. I don't think anyone voted for their health care costs to go up instead of down.
I want to talk to you a little bit about what can be done about that. But first, let me ask you, I was at an event with you and some other members of Congress not that long ago, and union members during the strike. We were at Independence National Historical Park. But recently, the AFGE, the union that represents a lot of federal workers, was urging members of Congress to vote yes to end the shutdown. Why did that not convince you?
Well, look, I completely understand the position they were in. I've talked to a number of folks privately who felt conflicted the same way I did. But the reality is the healthcare issue is just so central that I felt like this was probably the last best chance to address it. I'm still not going to give up and still continue fighting to address the healthcare crisis that we are now in, unfortunately, because of Republican cuts to those programs that I mentioned. But I have to say, for all of our federal workers who have suffered over the last 6 weeks, my heart goes out to them, and I am, in one sense, relieved for them. I don't think moving forward we should ever be in a situation again, whether Democrat or Republican, that we have government shutdowns. I'm the lead Democrat, as you know, on the Budget Committee, and one of the things I've been fighting for is actually to ban government shutdowns in the future, and I hope I will get some bipartisan support for that.
Yeah, given how divided government is, there is no guarantee right now that we won't have another shutdown. If the measure you're talking about doesn't go through, how do you protect things like SNAP, for example, if we were to have another shutdown?
Yeah, well, first, just to be clear, I mean, let's not forget, Republicans control the House, they control the Senate, they control the White House. At any time, Republicans could have adapted the filibuster to end the shutdown. They chose not to do that, which is interesting because over the summer, they did adapt filibuster rules in order to pass their mega tax cut that included the health care cuts in the first place that have now become front and center in this budget debate. But moving forward, look, we do need to have a true bipartisan effort. And I welcome anyone on the other side of the aisle who wants to work with us sincerely to address this healthcare crisis. The problem is, especially in the House, the overwhelming majority of House Republicans still are of a mind that they want to completely scrap Obamacare. And that would throw 20 million people off their health care. In addition, we do have these Medicare and Medicaid cuts that they voted for and will be taking effect. So this is a real mess. And the reason why moving forward I'm skeptical that Republicans will change their mind is just months ago, almost all of them voted for these cuts in the first place, every House Republican but for two.
So on the Obamacare subsidies, as we know, people are making decisions right now about their health care. Yeah. Do you think that there is still a path to either keep those subsidies in place or come up with some sort of compromise so things don't go up quite as much? Do you still hold out hope that that could be done at this point?
Well, I wouldn't be in this job if I didn't have the ability to hold out hope, sometimes despite evidence to the contrary. So I continue to have hope, and I will keep fighting. But one of the reasons why I voted the way I did when it came to the shutdown is I do believe this was the best opportunity to prevent those cuts from happening. And now that that has passed, we'll keep fighting. But the reality is this is an opportunity for maybe just a half dozen of House Republicans who say that they don't want these cuts. It's a real opportunity for them to actually work with us on the Democratic side and forge a true bipartisan majority. Unfortunately, over the course of the last 11 months, ever since President Trump returned to office and Republicans have been in the majority in the House, there has been no evidence whatsoever that that you even have more than a handful of Republicans who are willing to join with us to do something like that.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard about the possibility of a discharge petition to sort of force a vote to the floor. Is that in the works? Is that are there efforts underway for that?
Yeah, I can confirm and play reporter for a second here that is not only in the works. Literally just hours before the final vote, I went to the well of the House floor and signed that discharge petition to force us to have a vote on this. I expect that you'll have every single Democratic member of the House sign it. And now here's an opportunity for some House Republicans who say that they want to extend the Obamacare tax credits. Well, the discharge petition is right there. It is live, and they can actually go to the well of the House and sign it anytime the House is in session.
Before I let you go, I do want to ask you about another discharge petition. Who knew we'd be talking so much about those? But I guess in divided government, this has come up regarding the Epstein files. And I understand the Speaker has said, has indicated that there will be a vote potentially this coming week on that. Do you believe that there will be a vote on releasing the Epstein files? And where do you stand on that?
Well, Speaker Mike Johnson has done everything possible to prevent this vote from happening, even shutting down the House of Representatives for the last 6 weeks and refusing to swear in a duly elected member of Congress from Arizona. But with the House reopening on Wednesday, the new member from Arizona, Ms. Grijalva, was sworn in, and then she immediately signed the discharge petition, becoming the 218th signature. So we have every House Democrat, and we have 4 brave House Republicans who joined us. I give them credit. So hopefully next week, we will finally have a vote on the release of these Epstein files. We owe it to the victims of Jeffrey Epstein as well as Ghislaine Maxwell. The entire public needs to know what exactly is in these files and why the Trump administration and Speaker Johnson has been fighting so hard to keep them from coming public.
Congressman Brendan Boyle, appreciate your time. Good to talk to you.
All right. Thank you.
Let's go across the aisle now and get the Republican perspective. Joining us now is Congressman Ryan Mackenzie. He's a Republican representing the Lehigh Valley, including Olive Carbon, Lehigh, and Northampton counties, and parts of Monroe County. Congressman, great to see you.
Great to see you again as well. Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about this vote. Let's talk about this shutdown. You voted yes on this bill that reopened the government. What's your expectation of how quickly it's going to take for things to get back to normal, air travel, SNAP, other services?
Yeah, it was critically important that we reopen the government, something that I voted for in the very first place so that we wouldn't have even had a shutdown, because we've seen the devastating impacts, whether it's individuals on SNAP, air traffic controllers, our military potentially missing pay, Head Start programs in our area shutting down. All of those things are now going to be back online with the government reopening, but they take varying amounts of time for that money to start flowing. Some things are going to happen in a couple of days. Some are going to take a little bit longer. So we saw with the example of air traffic controllers that they stopped the flight reductions, but they left the lower level in place. And so that's going to take a couple of days to get back online, unfortunately. So those disruptions will continue. But again, ultimately, the government is reopening, which is a good thing.
The House was not in session for much of this. You and I talked during the shutdown. Do you think it would have made a difference to be there for the House to be in session, to figure something out quicker?
I don't think so. Again, we had voted on September 19th to fund the government by the end of that month. So we would have had our funding in place if the Senate would have taken that up. Ultimately, it was in the Senate's hands. They needed 60 votes. Republicans have a 53 vote majority. They were always seeking those members of the Democrats caucus to come over and vote with them. Unfortunately, it took 6 or 7 weeks for that to occur. Really quite a shame. And what we've seen from reporting, public reporting just in the past couple of days, is that those moderate Democrats who actually voted with Republicans to reopen the government, they were ready to do that weeks ago. But Chuck Schumer and the far left held them back. And so that is really a discouraging thing to hear because of all the impacts that were happening to Americans all across the country, really devastating impacts. That could have been alleviated and that could have been resolved a number of weeks ago. But Senator Schumer held them back from that. So that's a really discouraging thing to hear that was part of the political calculation they were making in the Senate Democrat caucus.
Given how divided things are in Washington and in the country, how confident are you that this Congress can avoid another shutdown and the impacts that we just saw?
So I think we have to look at what happened here. When we passed legislation through the House, it wasn't just to continue funding the government. We actually did pass some full year appropriations. There are roughly about 12 pieces of legislation that comprise the annual federal budget. And so each individual bill relates to typically a department. So Military and Veterans Affairs is one bill. Agriculture is another bill. We were able to get 3 of those through the House and over to the Senate that ultimately were included in this package to reopen the government. So not just funding for the whole government until January 30th, which was included, but for 3 particular departments, bipartisan support, bicameral support for full year appropriations for 3 of those 12 bills. And so that's what we have to continue to do. We have to continue to find that bipartisan support for those other 9 pieces of legislation so that we do not end up in this spot again.
What do you think of how the administration, how the Trump administration handled SNAP benefits during this shutdown? There was some back and forth in the courts. It was stressful for people.
Absolutely. It was very stressful for people. And so first and foremost, again, we should have never been in this spot, should have kept the government funding. That's what I voted for. Then when there was this question, it was really a legal question of if you can take funds out of an emergency fund, which is meant for disaster relief if there's a flood, a hurricane, fires, that money was in a nutrition assistance account for those types of emergencies. So the administration has done a lot to alleviate the burdens for military missing their pay, for WIC programs that were getting shut down. They were using all the legal options they could. And then obviously there was a question about that emergency nutrition assistance funding. It went to court. Ultimately, there was even some greater back and forth between their lawyers and the court. Thankfully, we're not going to have to deal with that. The funding has now been approved. But again, we actually have to look at not only when it comes to SNAP, but all these different things that were impacted. I think there should be a discussion ongoing about what we can do to mitigate the impacts of shutdowns in the future. And so I signed on to a number of pieces of legislation that said, for instance, military should never miss their pay. There should never be a question if we go into a shutdown or a budget impasse, what happens? Is our military going to get paid? That shouldn't even be a question. And so we need to revisit all of these things that were impacted by a shutdown and say, is there a way to resolve this issue going forward?
Let's talk a little bit about things going forward. Healthcare costs were a big part of this conversation. Democrats were saying they didn't want these subsidies for Obamacare that came in during the pandemic to go away because people's costs are going up quite a bit. Now that we are here and there was no resolution on that, do Republicans shoulder some blame for not taking action on it?
So we have to recognize that Obamacare was something that was put in place by Democrats in the early 2000s. They then have extended some tax credits in short-term fashion to provide relief because of the unaffordable nature for healthcare in the system that they designed. So we need to recognize that this is a Democrat problem that has been created. Now, that doesn't mean that we walk away from it and leave the American people in a lurch. As a representative who wants to try to find bipartisan solutions, we've actually been reaching out to our colleagues across the aisle for months, talking about different proposed solutions to this. And so when it comes to the tax credits, I think there is bipartisan support to say that we should not be allowing and having those tax credits go to millionaires and billionaires. That's not the individuals that actually need the help or the relief, but that is the case in the current Democrat plan and the COVID era tax credits that are in place. They can go to millionaires and billionaires, which is ridiculous. So I think there's a bipartisan appetite to say if we're going to do something, we should reform it. There is also some potential fraud in the system where insurance brokers are selling plans that have a $0 premium to low-income individuals. They obviously sign up for a plan that costs them nothing, and it is constantly getting renewed whether they utilize the plan or not, and sometimes even without their approval is what we've been hearing. And so we want to make sure that that type of fraud isn't occurring in the system where an insurance company is reaping the benefits, because that's who these tax credits go to. They go to insurance companies. They don't go to individuals. And if the insurance company is reaping a benefit in a way that they shouldn't be, that should be reformed as well. So we want to make sure that any kind of relief goes to working families, individuals, and seniors out there who really do need assistance to bring down the high cost of healthcare. But we should also be looking for appropriate reforms if we're going to be renewing a program. And again, these are things that have bipartisan support. Even before the government shutdown, myself and others were engaged across the aisle in these kinds of discussions. Unfortunately, we saw from Leader Jeffries, Democrat Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, when we had put out a proposal for a one-year extension to continue the conversations, but do a one-year extension so that we could find some bipartisan solution, he said absolutely not. He laughed and said that's not something that they were entertaining. So we need to find a willing partner. And just like the Senate did, they found moderate Democrats who wanted to do something in a bipartisan fashion. I think if we're going to be successful, we need to find those willing partners in the House as well.
Do you think that there is time to come to some sort of agreement on the health care subsidies before people have to pay a higher bill?
It's hard to predict a legislative process because, again, you're trying to ascertain whether or not 435 people in the House, 100 people over in the Senate, and one person in the White House can come to some kind of agreement that gets majority support along the way. So it's hard to predict. But what I can tell you is the unfortunate thing about the shutdown is that it actually burned off 6 weeks from the clock of negotiations and legislative discussions because, again, as I just gave the example with Hakeem Jeffries, he said absolutely not to what was a reasonable proposal that had bipartisan support. It's something that even members of his own caucus, again, moderate Democrats, were saying, let's do this one-year extension so that we can have a conversation about the longer-term reforms that I had laid out. And again, when that happened, members of his own party said, well, our leadership said that that's not going to happen, so we're abandoning these discussions. And that set us back. And so this whole time we could have been working on these solutions, but we're going to, redouble our efforts now and see if we can come to some kind of bipartisan solution by the end of the year. And I'm hopeful, and I'm somebody who is advocating for some kind of solution. So hopefully we can get there.
All right. I know we're just about out of time. I wanted to ask you one more thing that came up yesterday amid everything. The speaker indicated yesterday that there's going to be a vote on something else, that there's going to be a vote on releasing the Epstein files. Where are you on that? Would you vote to release them?
Yeah, I will. And the reason is because I've always said we want maximum transparency. And so we need to be thinking about the victims, making sure that the perpetrators are held appropriately accountable for their heinous actions. And so we had previously authorized an approach where the Oversight Committee in the House was looking into these files, releasing them in batches, which had been occurring. But what we've seen more recently is just in the past couple of days, for instance, Democrats selectively released information, redacting certain information, and trying to make a political game out of it. And that is not what we should be doing. We should actually, again, be thinking about the victims, making sure perpetrators are held accountable. And if that's not going to occur in a process like we've laid out, then the better thing to do is to have full transparency for the entire American public to see. And so that would be a yes vote on that bill.
All right, we'll have to leave it there for now. Congressman Ryan Mackenzie, thanks for joining us and sharing your perspective. Great to talk to you.
Thank you.
That does it for this episode of Battleground Politics. You can hear more of my interviews with public officials, candidates, political insiders, and voters by subscribing to my Battleground Politics podcast. Past episodes are streaming now on NBC10.com, the NBC10 app, our NBC Philadelphia YouTube page, or you can listen while on the go wherever you get your podcasts.